Hi everyone, this is Sula DePaula here with A Touch of Consciousness. It's a YouTube channel dedicated to breath work and everything related to increasing consciousness in your world and in the world. Today we're going to have a chat with a dear friend of mine, Maureen Malone, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Maureen Malone is a center manager together with Tony Lamastro for the Philadelphia and New York Rebirthing Centers. She started her breathwork practice in New York City in 1990 and continues to offer breathwork sessions, weekends, professional breathwork training in New York and on the Upper Side, on the Upper East Side, as well as in Philadelphia. She was introduced through breathwork in 1980, and she continues to be doing this work, and we're going to talk about that. Maureen and her husband, Tony, has been training breathworkers for over 25 years, and also leading the Loving Relationships training. So, welcome, Maureen.
Thank you, Sula. I'm happy to be here with you today.
Thank you so much for being here. I love having conversations with breath workers. It's definitely a passion of mine, and particularly talking with breath workers who are so dedicated to this work. So thank you for being here. And so tell me a little bit about how did you start and how did breath work come to you?
Well, I guess really the start point for me was my father died suddenly when I was 21, and I was very close to him. So the effect that had on me was to shut down emotionally. I became really numb, disconnected from myself. I couldn't feel anything, and it was so intense. I ended up quitting my job. I ended up moving back home because I had been on my own at the time. And I was really disconnected. And I tried going to therapy, but I was so unable to even connect with what I was feeling that they couldn't access anything for me. And I can't even say it was the therapist's fault. I can just say that I was totally blank, like nothing, almost dead inside is how it felt. So one day a friend of mine called me and said, you know, I'm going to a seminar called the Loving Relationships Training, and would you like to come? So I felt like I might as well try this because so far I hadn't been able to connect in any way. So the training itself, as you know, is a lot about your relationship with yourself and your history and how your history affects you. And so in the middle of the training, they had an introduction to rebirthing breathwork, conscious connected breathing. And at a certain point in the weekend, we all laid down on the floor. There's like 100 of us, 150 probably. And I just couldn't imagine how breathwork would affect me. But when we went into that session, I just opened up emotionally so much. I'm feeling it a little bit now, but I'm so grateful for how it opened me up to my emotions and behind just all the feelings I had been storing about grief and loss. And then right behind that was this feeling of aliveness and vitality. And I thought, I don't know what just happened, but I want more of this. And so I continued on by doing private breathwork sessions, which really was an accelerated experience for me. And eventually became a rebirthing breathworker in 1990. And I love this work.
Wow, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about the kind of breathwork that we do. I love the fact that breathwork is becoming more and more mainstream, and people are hearing more about it, and their breathwork classes more and more. And I see it myself here in South Florida. I've been teaching for about 15 years, and there used to be no breathwork classes around. That's why I went to Philadelphia to get trained, and I'm seeing all kinds of different breathwork being facilitated. So what kind of breathwork is it that you practice?
I practice conscious connected breathing, which is also known as rebirthing. And I think a number of the breathworks the form, there's so many different forms of breath work, but I think the ones that are the most commonly used for accessing what's inside of you is conscious connected breathing. And that can be transformationals based on that, and clarity breath work. The teachers of that are rebirthers who just shifted into a new name. But it's just very powerful work. And again, I think in my own experience, it's the idea that your issues are in your tissues. You know, that's a great phrase, because I could not get to it by talking about it. And breath work just totally bypassed my mind,
Yeah.
and brought me in here. And I think that's the gift of the work, is that when people come into a session, they have no idea what to expect. You know, they just think they're going to do, was my experience. You're going to connect your breath, and, you know, you might feel energy in your body. But what happens is you start often to access or uncover old beliefs or old memories that, you know, give you the opportunity to feel what's really inside of you, which is, you know, transformative in itself.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the kind of breath work I do.
Yay, me too. So I love that. And that's one of the ways that I explain also here in Delray. In my practice, it's a body-centered therapy where we are healing the mind through the body, right? And using breath work to stay really conscious and aware of body sensations. Yeah, so
And you know what, I want to just add to that, to what you're saying, Sula, about how much more attention is being given to breath work. You know, I want to say, I think it actually, in some ways, breath work came to the attention of people a lot during yoga, which I really acknowledge and validate. In my own life, I have a yoga practice, and just the awareness of breath in one form. So depending on the form really determines your result. But the other thing that's so wonderful about this work is the beginning of it might be the kind of awareness of your history and beliefs and how they're affecting you. But beyond that, there's the real full connection with a feeling of oneness and how breath connects us all. So it goes even beyond, you know, the personal. I'm sure you know what I mean by that.
yeah, thank you for that. That was great. So thank you, Maureen. I really appreciate you sharing and spending the time today to talk about it. One of my intention is to really spread the knowledge of breath work and, you know, let people know, hey, there's this amazing holistic approach, and that could help unravel so much of mind patterns and old unresolved feelings that could be causing illnesses in the body and in the mind. So thank you for being here. Thank you for doing the work that you do in the world. I appreciate you. So today we're going to talk about how does breath work go together in supporting relationships. As we were talking earlier, it's a big part of our work as a breath worker is to talk about relationships and look at how we are functioning in relationships. So give me like how does breath work support relationship? Just a couple of things that comes to mind.
Well, you know, I think, you know, I'll use a very personal example, but also what I notice in sessions is, you know, one of the things we work with is beliefs and how your mind affects your body and how you feel about yourself and others. So sometimes really uncovering what we call a negative core belief or a personal lie, meaning it's not the truth about you. You start to discover very common thoughts that people have, myself included. I'm not good enough, or I'm not enough, or there's something wrong with me, or I don't belong. And a lot of those get formed in our early history. But when you start to use your breath, you start to open up those areas, and you often experience an emotion that comes with that, where you form that belief to begin with. And once you release and integrate that, you're open to a new perspective. And the way that changes your relationship is you're no longer operating from a false belief. You're operating from more the truth of who you are. And that opens you up to a whole other level of participation with whether it's your friends or your intimate partners or at work. It starts to create change starting with you. And you discover that all the things you might have been blaming your results on have more to do with how your history has colored the view you have of your world and of the people in your life. Mm-hmm. So it creates enormous shifts inside of you. And, it's like the Course in Miracles. I love that description that, a miracle is a shift in perception. And I think that's really what breathwork offers, is a shift in perception.
Well said. That was great. All right. So how does the subconscious mind affect our relationships?
Okay, so I'll give you two examples. One I'm going to use from my history, which was, I had a good friend that when we were growing up and we were high school friends and longer, I had a terrible habit of whenever we would make plans to get together, I'd be late or I'd cancel last minute, or it was those two things in particular were usually what was happening. And of course, in response, she would be upset and she'd be angry. But then there was one particular moment where I was late, for God knows what amount of time I did this, and she really got into a rage. It was beyond the situation, which is a lot what we realize in this work, that when you're having an overreaction, there's something else going on. So fortunately, I had started doing this work personally for myself. And what I discovered was that in my own history, the way I got attention from my mom was by coming in late and showing up. I mean, it was negative attention, but it was still attention. So I would not show up on time for dinner. I would come in later than the time she told me to come home. And what would happen with my friend in her history, her mom would tell her she was going to pick her up at school and she wouldn't show up, or she would be late. She'd get caught up in work. So my friend had a real history of abandonment. So every time I showed up late, it would activate that in her. And then I would get the anger that I was used to. So in this work, we call that a dovetailing pattern, where one person's history is activated. This is all unconscious by the other person's history. Fortunately, we remained friends, and I really got awareness about this in this work, and she and I had a really incredible conversation about it. It was not until we started really talking about it that she shared about her mom, or even realized why she got so enraged. So it was a huge change in our relationship, really huge. And and we could have ended our friendship there. It was a strong enough incident that last time it really came close to our ending. And the one other thing I can say, we use this in the Loving Relationships training, which is more about intimate partners. And I thought this would be a good example. And I brought a little Mary and George. I don't know if that's showing backwards the writing or.
No, it's good. I like it.
Can you see the writing?
Yes, I can.
So I give you, this is the example. So Mary, and this is simplified, but Mary, when she was 3, her father died, and she was left with the thought, the men I love leave me. This is simplified, you guys. And then George, in his early life, he had something we call birth trauma, and his birth was, he was ready to come out of the womb. The obstetrician wasn't ready for him, or wasn't present yet, so they told the mom, they closed the mother's legs. And for an infant, that's extremely traumatic. So he had the thought, I have to get out of here or I'll die. So these two are adults, they meet, they connect, they have a great relationship together, they move in, and then at the 3-year point, George gets a great job traveling, and he's all excited, and so he's not going to be around as much. And this starts to kick up unconsciously the feeling for Mary of, the men I love leave me. So her reaction is to start getting needy and wanting more from him. And that begins to activate a feeling of suffocation for him. And it activates, I have to get out of here, I'll die. So these are all unconscious patterns, and again, kind of like myself and my friend, this could be the point where they split up. or if they begin to, start to do work of any kind, therapy, breath work, and become conscious of where these things are coming from, it can begin to bring them into a deeper level of intimacy with each other. And we do this, a lot of that even happens at work. You might have had a dominant parent in your life, and for some, the way that affected you was you suppressed your aliveness. And if you're working with people that have strong personalities at work, you might still have that same energy. So I find with breath work, when you start to uncover that, you begin to recognize it's safe to experience your own power and aliveness in the presence of other powerful people, as an example.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is a very powerful statement, that love brings up anything unlike itself for the purpose of healing. So when you come together in a relationship, in most cases, you're excited and you're looking forward to the relationship and being together. And the closer you get, and this is an interesting thing, the closer you get, in some way, the safer you almost feel for things to come up. Like that level of love and connection begins to bring up anything unlike itself. Right. So it's an interesting thing to be aware of, that when things come up in a relationship, it's actually love trying to heal you. Yeah. There's that piece of information that's trying to serve it, because otherwise you just repeat the pattern over and over again. And I know you know this, that we hear that from clients, the same pattern is repeated so many times. And that's because it's trying to get your attention. Right. And the other thing that I think is important to what you're saying around breath work is that, and this is maybe a metaphor, but it's the idea that as you're growing up, and even generally in life, there are some feelings that, like fear or anger, that you hold your breath sometimes subtly, and we say that they get held in the body, like frozen emotion is kind of the metaphor we use. And when you start to activate and open up your breath, it begins to give access to all of that that's been held inside. And sometimes it shows up as physical restrictions, and other times it shows up as how it's affecting you in your relationships.
Yeah, yeah, great. And it's just coming to mind also, like when that, let's just say that pain body, those emotions get activated, if we don't bring consciousness in and get out of victim consciousness, then we add more trauma and we hurt each other more, right? So it's like I have been working with couples lately, and I see how when they start to do their conscious work within their mind, the safety in a relationship starts to reestablish, and they don't have to leave the relationship to heal.
Absolutely.
Right? Because
absolutely.
They start to feel the safety again within themselves, and then with the partner, or it could be an intimate friend. It doesn't have to be, right, a loving a male and female. The safety comes back, and then they can heal together.
Well, and the other thing too that I think is, I find this a lot, and you probably do too, Sula, that really a lot that's at the bottom of everything, when you have really integrated and let go of pieces of your history, kind of like what happened to me in my first experience, is that there's your natural aliveness and innocence and joy is right there. So there's an uncovering that happens into the real truth of your being. And then that's what you then bring into a relationship, because you're in connection with all of who you are. And I think another thing that happens as a result of breath work and as a result of working with your thoughts is that you stop judging even the things that, at another point you might have been making wrong about yourself. You just notice that sometimes you have a thought, you give love to it, you say, okay, I notice I have this thought today, but you don't start ruminating and beating yourself up, then, bringing yourself into a contracted feeling of energy in your body. So it's very opening, even to just every now and then in your life, sit and take a few connected breaths to kind of just open yourself up.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's so amazing. I'm so happy for this work. It has supported me in so many ways, and all my relationships, that I'm so thrilled to be sharing this information He makes my heart open, you know, like I just feel so wide open right now. Um, what else would you like to add to this topic?
Well, I guess, there's a couple of things I can say. One of them is, again, I'm thinking of a, a woman I worked with that she was constantly having fights with her husband, and come to find out in the interview that I was doing, and that what we had talked about around her past history is that her parents fought a lot. So I think, again, often we repeat things not so much because we like them, but because that's what we know. So when she discovered her pattern of literally sometimes picking at him until she would get a fight out of him, once she realized that she didn't have to do that anymore, it created a really amazing shift for her. But the one thing I want to say too is that in this work, I have found, like for me in particular, my sister and my brother did this work themselves, rebirthing and the loving relationships training. And it was an enormous opening for us to talk about the different perspectives, actually really eye-opening, to see how my brother and my sister would have a totally different experience of something than I had, and to recognize kind of like, again, the veil that we were looking through. So again, it was another reason why I was so excited to continue with this work and spread it to other people, because in families, it's incredible. And you know this with working with couples, that they start to realize how their own belief systems are affecting them, and it begins to create a shift when they change them.
Yeah. Wow, that's wonderful. All right, so let's go over some of bullets. So breathwork supports relationships by making you aware of hidden thoughts, core beliefs that are not supportive, that are not life-giving and effective to have love relationship. And it helps you work through emotional charge and release the contraction and the tension in the body, right? It helps you go back into your innocence and the safety within yourself. What else?
Well, I think it also, again, it's like that idea of contracted emotion in your body, which can be physical or obviously emotional. It opens you up to a new level of participation with yourself and with others, because the more those energies get shifted, whether it's an old belief system or core thought or something from your family, the more those shift, the more it opens you up into aliveness, and it really begins to have you in a deeper level of participation with your life. And there's also, I think, I want to just mention this, and I know Juliana mentioned this, but, as breath workers, we work with forgiveness. We work with forgiveness processes, not just you say, I'm going to forgive someone, because we know that doesn't work, but we work with processes that help you, again, maybe first deal with the anger you feel at someone that you have an upset with or a past relationship, so that you can then begin to move on to a new relationship with someone else. Because if you're holding on to the energy of an old relationship and you're looking for a new one, the anger that's in your body is not going to make it easy for you to be available. You're still connected through that anger to the old partner or the person you were in relationship previous. So breathwork helps you really recognize how you're maintaining a connection with someone in a way that is not supportive. It begins to release that energy in your body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, so tell me a little bit about your trainings, and you and Tony, a facilitator for the 9-month program. When is that starting?
We have our 9-month breathwork training happening. It begins the weekend of September 21, 22, 23. And it's a week and a month for 9 months. So we go through a lot of what we're talking about now. Each weekend there's a group breathe on Friday night. There is exchanges. So you're exchanging breathwork sessions with a partner. But a lot of the work is around the experience of breath in your body, how to work with the breath with people that you will work with as a client, how to work with your core beliefs and begin to create change with them. We work a lot with communication and forgiveness processes. So it's a very powerful training, whether you're doing it for breath, to become a breath worker, or for your own personal growth. And we're also offering a breathwork weekend here, September 7, 8, 9. It's basically an introduction. And we offer them all the time. In Philadelphia, we have another one in Rhode Island. And hopefully one in New York in the not too distant future. And yes, so that's been a long-standing, really, really fun program. Well, you know, you've done it, Sula. It's really an incredible program for raising your vibration and clearing a lot of old energy and becoming a breath worker for those who want to do that.
Yeah, thank you. And do you have group breathes regularly at the center in Philadelphia?
We started again. We used to have a group breathwork once a month on Wednesdays, and we paused on that for a while. But we started again on Wednesdays. A colleague of ours, Ken Mann, is doing group breathwork here. We're also going to start another one at some point at Yoga on Main in Manayunk. And there are group breathworks going on in New York as well, which I try to post on our Facebook page. So yes, is the answer. We do group breathwork sessions.
Okay, cool.
You do also.
Yes. I just came to mind, you know, how we as breathworkers, rebirthers, we work with unraveling and clearing birth trauma. And it's a little deeper topic than what we covered today. And I just want to mention that we might do a segue to this Zoom and talk a little bit about birth and relationships, right? You and I.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really important topic, and I have a lot to say about that because it's just an important topic.
Yes. So I look forward to that. Yes, I offer breathwork classes here, also in Delray Beach, and I have a private practice here in Delray as well. Okay, great. Is there anything else you'd like to end with, Maureen?
Just I encourage everyone to try breath work in some form, but especially in the form of conscious connected breathing, rebirthing, breath work, or transformational, or clarity. They all use the same technique. Clarity is very aligned with what we do, but and I do want to say one thing too, that, you know, the sessions can be quite powerful. So I encourage that if you have that kind of a session, to continue to do the work, not let it scare you, but to really get that there's something really wonderful happening. And it's a joyous thing to share breath work. And, you know, so kind of like you, Sula, you know, it's been a passion for me all these years. And I love that it continues to be a passion. I've never gotten bored.
Me neither. I have never gotten bored teaching breath work. And each session, you know, particularly in private session, it's such an honor to hold space for someone to go through the process and become aware of limitations and release themselves from the past. It's a total honor to be doing this work.
It is.
I feel very fortunate, blessed, and incredibly grateful to you as one of my first senior teachers. And I love this work. And so, yes, this is an invitation for all of you who are watching. If you're looking for something different, perhaps this is for you. So thank you, Maureen, so much for your time. It's been wonderful chatting with you.
Same here. Thank you. It was great doing this. It was very exciting. And I also just want to acknowledge you for where you are in this work and how you're spreading the word. And you're just a wonderful example of what's possible in this work. So I'm really grateful to you for bringing it into expansion in this way.
Oh, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. So to be continued.
Yes.
Yes, we'll have another one on birth and relationships. And until then, thank you for joining and have a great day.